already have seen the terrific lineup of speakers we have for both our morning session and afternoon session today. As a quick summary, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shona Clive. I'm project lead for the Rail Cluster Builder project, working with the team at Scottish Engineering. I'm also chair of Women in Rail in Scotland. My previous role was with Babcock, and this month, on the 15th to be exact, is my 25th year in the rail sector. Just for those of you who don't know, the Rail Cluster Builder project is an 18-month project jointly funded by Scottish Enterprise and the European Regional Development Fund, and we're also directly supported by Transport Scotland. We have several aims in the project, but in a nutshell, our key purpose is to connect SMEs in the engineering and manufacturing sectors in Scotland, looking to diversify into rail or grow their presence in the sector and help facilitate the necessary links with the rail market in Scotland. So, for example, with Network Rail, ScotRail, Tier 1s and rolling stock manufacturers, and the wider supply chain as well, and to raise awareness of the opportunities across the Scottish rail sector and beyond. The context of the Rail Cluster Builder project is the Rail Decarbonisation Action Plan, in which the aim is to deliver carbon neutral rail transport by 2035 and make Scotland a leader in creating net zero emission railways. In the Rail Cluster, we've got around about 240 members who've registered. About 150 of them are SMEs from a wide variety of sectors. Those outside the SME category are rail sector organisations, universities and research centres. I can honestly say genuinely that my eyes have been opened at with the range of expertise and skills that we have right here on our doorstep in Scotland. Obviously, my knowledge is the rail sector, and meeting all the SMEs that have joined the Rail Cluster Builder has definitely been an eye-opener. The rail industry presents multi-sector diversification potential for the SMEs who work in industries such as aerospace and automotive, who have been adversely impacted by the impact of COVID at the moment. There are also SMEs from many other sectors such as marine, oil and gas, renewables, where there may be synergies or an opportunity to adapt their products and services to make them work in the rail sector, such as fabricators, machine shops, precision engineers, instrumentation controls and metal manufacturing. We at Scottish Engineering were delighted when Network Rail's RD&I team, Scottish Enterprise and Innovate UK joined forces and asked us to host this Rail Innovation for Scotland event, Rail Innovation Day for Scotland event. It's a great opportunity to hear about the challenges faced by key stakeholders in the Scottish rail market and hear about the 2021 first-of-a-kind competition. I hope today will spark some ideas, provide food for thought, and most importantly, enable some valuable connections to be made that could potentially lead to greener, exciting innovations of the future for rail in Scotland. Please do get in touch with us at the Rail Cluster Builder if you've got any ideas in this regard, and we'll do our best to support you in making the right connections. Just before I hand over to Alan Ross, Scotland's Director of Engineering and Asset Management, I'll run through some of the housekeeping to keep us right. As I said earlier, please turn off your video and mute your sound so that there's no distraction for speakers or attendees. Please use the chat facility to post any questions you may have. There are Q&A sessions at the end of each block of presentations in this morning's session. We'll ask you to put your camera on if your question is selected so that the speaker can answer your question directly and see your face. If you don't want to do that, don't worry though, it's just an option. It would be good to see faces. Also, if we don't get to all the questions that are posted, don't worry, we will make sure that we answer them after the event. Just as a quick aside, there's only one Teams link for both morning and afternoon sessions today, so just re-click on the same link when you're rejoining us in the afternoon, which I hope you'll do. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be shared after the event for those who can't make it today, so if you miss a bit, then the recording will be made available to you. It now gives me great pleasure to hand over to Alan Ross, Director of Engineering and Asset Management for Scotland's Railway. I'd like to personally thank you and your team for taking the time to be part of this event today, Alan. I'm absolutely sure this morning's session will generate much interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Shona, and good morning, everybody, from what is a beautiful, cold but snowy morning here in North Glasgow. So for once, I'm actually glad I'm actually sitting in the house rather than having to traipse through the snow to get into the office. As Shona said, I think this is a fabulous opportunity for Scotland PLC. The rail industry can at times be seen as quite daunting to engage with. So this morning and indeed today's event is really about showcasing the opportunities that Scotland's railway and indeed the national rail network present to tap into what has been an exciting time for rail. But the opportunity really is about engaging with the small to medium-sized enterprises and also our academia here in Scotland. Because I think, as we all know, Scotland has a really rich history of innovating, of providing some really innovative solutions to challenges, not only engineering challenges, but other sectors. And really, this is about showcasing how we can engage with you out there and provide a doorway into rail. Because rail really is at the fabric of the UK and here in Scotland, Scotland's railway employs just over 13,000 people, of which approximately 3,000 of them work with Network Rail. Pre-COVID, we carried over 100 million passengers per annum, which equated to just under 300,000 people a day. We carried 4.5 million tonnes of freight each week within Scotland and across the borders. And we have got a legacy of moving and keeping Scotland moving throughout really turbulent times, and certainly COVID and the pandemic presents us probably with the most turbulent time that we've experienced in a post-war era. So there are a number of challenges in particular that we have in the rail industry in Scotland, some of which are shared across the rail industry in the UK. And I've got a number of colleagues who will present this morning, and also a number of colleagues from the wider rail industry who will also present in this afternoon's session. So I would encourage everybody to certainly engage and to stay for both sessions, because both sessions are really, really powerful. A number of the topics that are being presented hopefully will spark interest and engagement, because I believe that Scotland's SME community has got a significant amount of advice that they can provide, solutions that you can begin to open our eyes to, because generally we tend to look inwards in the rail industry to the suppliers and the supply chain and the people that we know. And so today is really about opening our doors wider and getting everybody to engage, and hopefully engage in a manner that sparks interest and we can begin to see some real tangible solutions to some of the challenges that we've got. And I'll just probably give a wee overview of some of the challenges and where we really need your insight and assistance. Weather resilience, people who live in Scotland don't need to tell you about just how changing and problematic our weather can be. The last week has really just shown how snow in particular can affect travel, not just rail but road. But also we're actually seeing more and more heavy rain impacting on our network, not just during the winter and autumn, but also during the summer months. And believe it or not, we're also suffering from more heat-related issues than we've had previous years. And we know that climate change and our need to adapt to that climate change is becoming more and more of a challenge. So again, making our assets more resilient to cope with that change in weather is one of the challenges that we have. And there are a number of opportunities that we're exploring, all the way from managing rainfall, forecasting rainfall, making our assets more tolerant to the changes in heat and indeed cold temperatures that they face. So again, one of my engineers, Stuart, is going to be speaking this morning to present just some of those challenges. And there's no doubt that cost of running a national rail network is always a challenge for us. So we continue to seek ways to reduce our cost base, be that through our capital investment programmes or be that just through the way that we monitor and maintain our assets on a day-to-day basis. So again, good opportunities for organisations to help us reduce our cost over a number of sectors. And indeed, probably one of the biggest challenges and indeed massive opportunity for Scotland is our decarbonisation agenda. Scottish Government has committed to decarbonise Scotland's railway by 2035, and that presents us here in Scotland's railway with a huge opportunity to invest in the network, to make our network greener and cleaner, and really to use it as a modal shift to encourage not only people out of their cars, but also to encourage freight off of road and onto rail. And I think this is a very exciting time. Decarbonising our rail network is a big challenge, not only to electrify it, but also looking at alternative propulsion techniques in terms of hydrogen or battery. And I know that there's a bit of a presentation this afternoon about how we can, in Scotland, begin to push the boundaries of using alternative traction to help decarbonise probably those parts of the network where it's not economical to electrify. So that's probably all I was going to say in the way of an opener. You know, our aim here in Scotland is to create a railway that is safer and higher performing, that is capable of growing and being customer focused. It really needs to be efficient and competitive as a transport mode. And importantly, it really needs to be sustainable. It needs to be sustainable from a greener credential, but it also needs to be sustainable in the way that we utilise rail as the backbone to grow our economy and hopefully to use it as a real springboard as we move out of the COVID pandemic. So, Shona, I'll hand back to yourself, and I hope everybody has an enjoyable morning session and also stays for this afternoon session. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alan. I think it's David Rowe next.
Yes, thank you, Shona. So hello everyone. It's great to be part of this event. So my name's David Rowe. I'm the head of rail technology with Network Rail, and I'm going to be just giving you a bit of an overview on our R&D portfolio, which hopefully the slide will appear in a minute, unless my connection's a bit slow. Can everybody else see it?
Yeah, it's fine, David.
It's fine. Okay, good. All right. So you should be looking at a slide which is titled "Why an R&D Portfolio?" And really, so we have in Network Rail taken a very different view in our current control period of how we need to approach research, development, innovation, getting new technology into the railway. So for the first time ever, really, we've kind of brought R&D across the whole organisation into one sort of integrated portfolio, because there's so much to do here to kind of make this all work. So I popped a little quote in from Andrew Haynes, our chief executive, at the bottom there, which came from his introduction to the industry's rail technical strategy back last autumn. And you know, so we must recognise the importance of innovation beyond today and find longer-term solutions fit for the future of rail. So I think it's really kind of recognising that we've kind of reached a bit of a watershed, and that innovation. I mean, I know Alan was saying about that there can be a bit of a tendency to kind of look inward in rail, but to really kind of recognise that actually this isn't innovation isn't something that we need to be doing at the margins. This has to actually be a fundamental part of our strategy going forward, in order to achieve all sorts of things. Some of which Alan's outlined in terms of Scotland's priorities, but you know, at the end of the day, the railway is quite expensive to run, and so this a graphic that you can see on the right hand side, we're very sort of focused on, you know, life has to get better for passengers. There's a huge opportunity in terms of delivering efficiencies through the smart application of new technologies, that low carbon agenda, and of course supporting the nation's industrial growth. You know, this isn't just about a railway that kind of exists in splendid isolation. You know, the railway and the supply chain is all completely woven into the fabric of Scotland and the rest of the country. So we've just shown a few partners here. There are, in terms of how to deliver this, and the part of the benefit of running this as a portfolio is really, this is an exercise in bringing people together. You know, we have to collaborate to innovate, and so this just is intended to give an indication of the breadth of partners that we're working with. So I mean, but you know, the hundreds of organisations and thousands of people within them, and really this is an exercise in bringing people together in order to achieve those goals. The funding that we've been able to put to this in the current control period, again, is a sort of step change compared to what we've ever been investing before. So the best part of £250 million over the 5-year control period, and really kind of targeting bringing in all sorts of other funding opportunities, whether those are pure commercial ones in terms of the investment in R&D that the companies want to make themselves, right through to kind of leveraging wider government and European investment. And to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Can you move it on, Jonah? So yeah, I think my laptop is very slow at refreshing. So just to provide you with a bit of an illustration of some of the developments, and as they've kind of landed already. So all of the pictures on this slide represent things that are pretty well developed, and I haven't got time, unfortunately, to run through them all now. But just to give you an indication that we're not just this isn't just an academic exercise by any means, and actually we genuinely are covering the sort of full breadth of improving the railway. So there's quite a lot there in terms of improving the passenger experience. Janine Fountain, my colleague, is going to be talking to you about a couple of those pictures on the top right hand side around lifts and escalators and the AVA Footbridge a little bit later. But the picture that's sort of bottom left under passenger experience and operations is showing cryogenic blasting, which is something that you've trialled in terms of producing improving autumn performance on the Scottish Railway. So there's a number of things there, and also probabilistic gauging, which is the sort of figure in the middle on the top row under better passenger experience and operations, which is about you know, getting different types of rolling stock through a line whilst sort of minimising the infrastructure changes that you really need to make that happen. Next one, Shona. So, pardon?
I was just saying that's me moved it forward.
Oh, you have, yes, thank you. So, as I was saying earlier, this really kind of represents a step change in the scale and approach for innovation. So, in the R&D portfolio at the moment, we've got well over 100 projects in flight. They're kind of split across 7 programs, which to a large extent are kind of split by different asset types, but also driven by what we're trying to do. So this isn't about just focusing on short-term tactical innovation, sort of immediate transfers of technology, although of course that is really what the first of a kind 2021 competition and the grant available that Kelvin Davis from Innovate UK is going to talk about this afternoon. But also at the other end, we are looking at you know, really big transformational change in rail, and particularly which requires collaboration at a global level to achieve. And so one of the things that we think is really important here is that essentially with our R&D portfolio, we're able to provide sort of hooks and opportunities to connect you know, Scottish suppliers in with what is happening more broadly. So we've already secured £41 million, in terms of external funding, we've already invested 75 million of that nearly £250 million of the direct funding that we're able to spend under our control period settlement. So we're certainly on track in terms of making very significant investment in the current control period. And one of the keys here as well in terms of actually getting stuff deployed and really kind of helping to smooth that process from idea right through to deployment. Over on the right hand side there, we've not just been concentrating on trying to frame requirements to prioritize what innovation really needs to happen, but we've also been focusing on the process. So we've been doing a lot of work with our commercial colleagues in terms of developing leading edge procurement. So we're working very closely with Innovate UK. The particular competition that's being launched today is funded by DFT, but we've also funded Innovate directly from the Strategic R&D Fund, so that we are putting really kind of focusing on the challenges that we need to be fixed, rather than trying to focus too much on the best way of achieving those, and actually leaving that to the kind of the brilliance and creativity that exists within the supply chain. Thanks, Shona. So moving on to the kind of last couple of slides, really just to give, I wanted to take the opportunity to make sure you were aware of the UK's rail technical strategy, which has sort of been kicking around for a lot of years. But was refreshed and published or launched in October last year. On one level, it might be tempting to think, well, so what? But I think this is really, really important. The refresh has been all about focusing it very, very clearly on the needs of business and end users. And in supporting the industrial strategy itself. So very, very important opportunity. I think there are some very kind of simple and compelling roadmaps associated with that. So if you feel like checking it out, there's the web address there. It's hosted by the Rail Safety Standards Board, and really the idea behind this is to pull people together across the sector, and to make it really kind of generate a much more kind of compelling and simple narrative around how we're trying to use research development and new technology to deliver better outcomes for the railway in the kind of short to medium term. So that the focus of the roadmaps this time, for example, have a 5-year time frame, whereas before we've tended to talk about 20 or 30 years, which quite frankly these days is not a great way of engaging anyone. So the last slide is just then takes that much more broadly. So I mentioned before that we are very, very clear that it's important to build international collaborations, not just the collaborations within domestically, and a very practical part of doing that. So this is just a few images to give you an idea of some of the things that we are working on in order to create opportunities, essentially. So starting with Shift to Rail at the bottom. Hundreds of millions of euros in that Horizon 2020 project, where we've been working as one of 8 founding members. And actually, sort of, we're expecting to kind of move forward with that. As you may well know, the government has reached a reasonable position on sort of being very supportive of European R&D continuing post-Brexit. So actually there are some great opportunities that can kind of then further springboard from what's been done in Shift to Rail, and kind of connect with the Rail Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, which is a European publication, and we've been heavily involved in shaping that so that it delivers the things and connects back into our UK technical strategy. And then building collaborations with other organisations. For example, ProRail is one example of where we have a memorandum of understanding, and we have a range of work that's kind of going on with them. And we're also very heavily involved with the International Union of Railways. So this just this whole presentation, I appreciate, apologies, I've gone slightly over my slot, is to really just frame some of the opportunity that we feel we're able to bring together and bring to bear in terms of helping to create opportunities to support, a Scottish contribution to improving Scottish railways, but also to making a contribution more widely in the kind of UK and international railways scene. So I think I'm handing over to you, Janine, now.
Yes, thank you, David. Great. So just to introduce myself, I'm Janine Fountain. I'm one of the R&D program managers that David talked about on the R&D portfolio. So between us, we cover all different asset types, all different problem statements for the country. I look after civil engineering projects and environmental sustainability projects. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about the AVA Footbridge, which is one of the projects in the buildings portfolio. And it's a great example of a collaborative project. And as David said, you've got to collaborate to innovate. So if we go on to the next slide. So the AVA Footbridge, it's a multi-funded project, so part funded by Network Rail, part funded by Innovate UK through the Transport Infrastructure Efficiency Strategy Living Lab, which is a collaboration of 25 different organisations, including Network Rail. And the AVA project itself is a collaboration between Expedition Engineering, Extreme Systems, Walker Construction, the MTC and Network Rail, as well as a number of other parties as well as that, who we work with in terms of architects and things like that. It's quite an ambitious project. We are frustrated by the time it takes us to manufacture, install, plan for and deliver footbridges for stations where we need to install steps and lifts. The time taken is too long, the planning process is quite difficult, the construction process involves quite complex lifting arrangements and things like that. And quite simply, we would like to be able to roll out our Access for All program to enable step-free access at more of our stations far quicker than we can. So we're trying to reduce cost, we're trying to do it faster. At the same time, we've got great opportunity to reduce emissions as part of this and make ourselves more low carbon, and to improve our exports as well. So the projects that we're delivering will take a couple of years, and we have a plan to deliver the new footbridge, a new type of lift as well, and a configurator tool which will help us design future lifts for different stations. We're calling it the adaptable bridge because it means that it's easier to plan and design the bridge specifically for a site than it would be for our current footbridges. But I won't say any more because we've got a fantastic little video, and I'll just move on to that now and Paul can press play.
We know that 80% of the UK railway network is made up of small to medium-sized stations, and they are the starting point for almost 1 billion journeys that end up passing through Network Rail's 20 managed stations. We also know that making our stations more accessible encourages the use of our network, and we know that the encouraged use of our network encourages socio-economic development in the local communities where we have more accessible railway stations. This then drives regeneration in the local communities.
In Network Rail, we build a lot of footbridges, and we have bridges on stations and we have bridges away from stations. The challenge that we have with this project is around station footbridges. So usually we use an Access for All footbridge, and the timescales involved in building those bridges is so long that we knew we had to approach it differently. And the professional head for buildings and architecture had the idea to approach some more novel suppliers and to collaborate in a consortium to come up with a new design and a new process for constructing a footbridge that meant we could save a lot of time, a lot of money and a lot of carbon. And that's how we went about looking at starting a project through the Innovate UK competition that we ultimately were successful in.
Expedition Engineering are a well-known engineering consultancy, award-winning, should I say. They are very good at challenging the brief. They're very good at designing lean and elegant structures. Extreme Systems bring a manufacturing capability to the table that I've never seen before, if I'm honest. They've got a very advanced plant up in Northampton. MTC develop and prove innovative manufacturing processes and technologies. And us as Walker Construction, we try to glue the whole thing together.
So I guess the evolution of our collective ideas really benefits from our differences in experience and diversity. In a more traditional design and construction process, we're used to fabrication and its limitations being part of the constraints in the way we design. So with Extreme on board, we're constantly reminded of the freedom of a manufacturing process, and that opens up the design for us. It feels like a mantra of this project has been, and why not? That diversity allows those questions to be explored without preconception, and we've had some really interesting outcomes from those deep dives. Also, having Network Rail as an integrated part of the team has removed the traditional interaction of client and team, shortcutting that whole process in a really, truly collaborative way.
So we've designed this bridge as a system. It's not a custom designed bridge for each site. What it is a system that you can configure to fit on any site. It means the components can vary in scale or in number. They can be tuned up and down, depending on whether you need to go higher or lower over the railway. Spans can vary. We can go from 2-track to 4-track with an island platform to 6-track or whatever. So it's a reconfigurable design, and has been from the very outset. It's been designed as a kit from the outset, and in order to turn that into something that's more than just a piece of design philosophy, we've been working with the MTC, the Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry, on a knowledge-based engineering configurator, which is a bit like the configurators you get for designing your kitchen, or if you want to buy a new car, you go online and you can specify all sorts of things, but within a family environment.
The configurator is a highly important element to the bridge and the design and concept. What the knowledge-based engineering will allow us to do is to eliminate large proportions of the design lead time, and it will speak electronically to the manufacturing systems and processes, which will ultimately allow us to further demonstrate Industry 4.0 and digitalization. Prototyping is a fundamental process within the manufacturing environment. Simply allows us to ensure that our systems and processes are aligned with the products that we wish to produce. And what this does is that through the prototyping stages is that it will highlight any issues or anomalies that need to be rectified prior to production. And what this then essentially does for us is it creates a seamless transition from the final design to manufacture.
In this process, I guess if we followed a more linear form of design, we wouldn't really get the benefits of that really, really early involvement of the manufacturer and contractor. So by turning things upside down and making a prototype really early on in the process, before we'd even settled on the final option for the AVA Bridge, it gave us insight, I guess, into the true opportunities available in the manufacturing process. And that's really informed our concept design in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise.
I think obviously the next steps are to arrive at a successful completion at March 22, which we're all, as I alluded to before, we're all very confident that we can achieve. And it's an exciting journey. We've started really, really good. We're sort of slightly ahead of program. So yeah, moving forward, we've obviously got an obligation under our funding from IUK that we will develop and implement a exploitation plan. And we're working that up concurrently with what we're doing on the AVA Bridge project at the moment.
The bridge is being constructed at the Railway Innovation and Development Centre at Network Rail in Melton Mowbray. and we've been working with the team at the RIDC to plan the construction. And the location we've chosen is going to be a disused station that we have over a live test track there with overheads. So really representative of how it will ultimately be built on the railway, and quite a challenge for the project, but a realistic one that means that we'll be truly testing the design and build process that we've got to go through to build these bridges.
Our aim with the AVA project is that we'll revolutionise the way that we approach station footbridge design, manufacture and installation. Meeting the targets that we've set in the project brief of significantly reducing costs, making it far more environmentally friendly and reducing construction installation time, we believe will allow station footbridges to be rolled out at a much quicker timescale than they currently are. This will affect the whole of the UK, as Network Rail manages the entire UK network. So the AVA Footbridge has the potential to drive increased accessibility across the whole of the UK's railway stations.
Right, great. So apologies for those of you who had a bit of a jumpy video there. We'll make sure that the link to the video is available, because we have a website anyway for the avabridge.com, so you can go and find it there anyway. Just to close on my slot, it's great to be able to present just one of the many examples of excellent projects that we believe we've got ongoing at the moment in research and development, almost all of which are collaborations. A little bit later on, you'll be able to see some of the opportunities where we'd like to get the supply chain and academia involved in more of our problem statements and solving those. So yeah, delighted that we're able to showcase those to you today. And I'll hand over to Sean.
Great stuff, thank you, Sinead. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody is well. I'd just like to briefly introduce myself. I'm Sean Blaney, and I head up the Applied Technologies Department at Central Alliance, which is part of the RSK group of companies. And I primarily look after the R&D surrounding remote sensing technologies, such as GroundSat that I'm discussing today, and also cosmic radiation products as well, such as muon tomography. I'll hopefully be able to answer any questions or technical queries that spring to mind in the Q&A session later this morning. So just really briefly, GroundSat as a product has been developed to enable soil moisture mapping at both route-wide scale and earthwork asset scale at a spatial resolution of about 3 meters, providing for the gravimetric soil moisture values typically within the relatively near surface material. Now, in line with the earthworks technical strategy, the challenge statement that we're responding to is that of helping Network Rail to understand the impact of climate change and the adverse weather effects that are becoming more frequent, with an ultimate goal of helping to understand the relationship between soil moisture values and landslide or debris flow type events. Could I grab the next slide, please? Thank you. So why Scotland? The MLG2 route between Fort William and Mallaig in northwest Scotland was chosen for a variety of reasons, such as the inaccessibility of the route, both in terms of topography and just simply the remoteness of the route itself. Also, the MLG route has the highest rainfall in the entire UK, I've been told. And finally, there have been a number of debris flow type events that have affected the line in recent years as well. Could I grab the next slide again, please? So why Network Rail? With regard to the first bullet point on this slide, I think what the infrastructure industry is seeing is a bit of a paradigm shift towards remote sensing technologies, both spaceborne and aerial technologies, and certainly the uptake has increased exponentially industry-wide, I believe, in recent years, partly in response to the desire to keep the boots off the ground, but also in an effort to decarbonise the inspection and maintenance of the rail. Perhaps the most important bullet point on this slide is the last one, and something I would like to point out is the importance of early engagement with Network Rail in the R&D process. And I say this is something that we've benefited from in shaping the project that we're currently undertaking in northwest Scotland. Could I grab the next slide again, please? So in terms of projects, we're acquiring synthetic aperture radar imagery from the Japanese Space Agency ALAS-2 satellite, and potentially also the newer Argentinian Space Agency SAOCOM 1 and 2 constellation. So we're carrying out projects in May and October, which are respectively the driest and wettest months of the year, up there in northwest Scotland, to allow us to build on our understanding of seasonal variation introduced not just by rainfall but other seasonal factors as well. And then finally, during each acquisition, we're collecting at least 120 soil samples that are then sampled at our labs for moisture content to enable us to both validate existing models used to process the SAR data, and also potentially refine the machine learning models to enable a better model fit ultimately. And that concludes my short presentation. Hopefully it was informative and useful. And I'm going to hand over to Mike Mustard of Finlay Irvine with a presentation on earthwork failure detection.
Hi there, everybody. So I'm Mike Mustard, company's Finlay Irvine. So just very briefly, the who we are, one of the things we do, and a bit of why I think Network Rail or the rail industry is worth being involved in. So who are we? So we're a relatively small Scottish electronic manufacturer based in Pennycook, but we've been in the rail industry for nigh on 50 years now. Largely, for a long time, it was rail switch heating, which is timely at this time of year. So we supply most of the control systems that control the heating. But we've been involved in condition monitoring for a long time around signalling assets. And then Network Rail launched this project, well, let's call it project, called an Intelligent Infrastructure, which is all about improving reliability, going to condition-based maintenance, predict and prevent. It's got numerous phrases around about it, and we were quite lucky to be involved in the early days of that, and essentially supplying data loggers for signalling, power, track assets. But that's led on to numerous other projects in that kind of sphere, and that's been a great success for us. And if we can move to the next slide, please. So the specific one about earthworks failure is quite sad, timing wise, but we've been involved with this for a number of years, and we were lucky enough to win a project to roll out a pilot, a trial study, if you like, of equipment to detect when failures had happened. There's an awful lot of work, as we just heard a minute ago, about trying to understand the triggers for those failures, but at the moment the exact saying, I believe the exact saying something like we get, I don't know, 50 millimeters of rain an hour kind of thing will trigger a landslide. We don't truly understand that, and that's largely because Network Rail, so the UK rail network is kind of 150 years old from Victorian age. So really what they wanted was this alarm bell kind of system that something has moved and is slipping or is moving. So what we have is, I don't know how well you can see in the picture, but the top one is an old slope that has slipped, and you can see below it some yellow poles. On each of these little yellow poles there's a tilt sensor, and simply if these move, we report back through a solar powered logger with a couple of cameras, and it's really as simple as that. There is some reasonably clever technology in the wireless. The sensors are wireless, the battery life we get out of them. But it's fairly simple at the end of the day, and has proven to be technically it's proven to be almost too efficient when for things like de-vegging and people hanging coats on things that we've triggered numerous false alarms. One of the things that we generally do with Network Rail is we generally just supply the kit, the equipment, the hardware that goes on the ground. But in this instance, they also wanted a management system, because Network Rail's own management system, now called Radar, wasn't quite ready yet to take the data. So we developed our own system, and we do this for numerous other things. And this is how the trial has been run out. The size of the trial is currently, there's several thousand sensors installed in 150-ish locations around the UK, quite a few in Scotland. It's, as a development project, we're still getting there. There's quite a few technical challenges working on this thing, which we're still working through, truth be told. But it's all about managing the current climate, as it were. Just one of the small pieces in that puzzle. And it's been very good business for us. And it's also, which I'll mention a little bit, it's extended, given us some opportunities outside the UK from what we've done. Next slide, please. So a bit of more generally, and a slightly view from an external body, an external company to Network Rail of why be involved in Network Rail and the rail industry. I think from largely what Network Rail or the rail industry is, largely you're speaking to engineers, and it's very interesting from an engineering point of view. The scale of it is quite incredible as a rail organisation, because you're involved in potentially massive civil contracts, civil projects, to obviously the train side of things, into IT kind of stuff. So there's a massive scale of opportunities out there that there's tremendous scope to be involved in many different areas within Network Rail. There are many opportunities because Network Rail is largely a bespoke industry. It's largely technology. There's a lot of old technology out there. We find Network Rail is a good company. Financially, they're a good company to work with. It's also stable. One of the things I find quite interesting about the rail industry is that governments, my view, invest in rail in good times and in bad times, and largely speaking, that happens around the world. So really, what you see is that if you can be successful in the UK rail and network, you should have opportunities outside of the UK for that kind of same technology or very similar technology, because roughly speaking, UK started the rail industry. So roughly speaking, the rail industry is remarkably similar all around the world. There are some maybe slightly positive things, is that we found it to be can take quite a while to develop products and kind of get them to market. And we've seen a few things. 5 years is not unusual for some stuff. That's largely safety related, which is understandable, being the type of application it is. But I think it's what's important when people are trying to get into this industry. The technology is sometimes not the challenging bit, and some people and processes can be the biggest challenge, and how to make best use of the data and make use of it reliably. And unfortunately, you have little control over that, so you just have to sit back and watch. But what you can do is make your stuff simple to use. Another big challenge is making it robust environmentally. I mean, most of our stuff sits in the outside world, and you've got potentially quite large vibration. You've got EMC issues. You've got 25 kV crackling around. And then obviously environmental, that kind of doesn't need to be said any more about that. So that can often be quite a large challenge. And again, remember the cost of the technology is only part of the puzzle, part of the cost, whole life cost. We try and make stuff simple to install and maintain, because these costs can often be more than the actual equipment. And something we've always learnt, I guess, over the years, I mean, condition monitoring's been talked about a lot over the years, but I think what's important is actual condition monitoring of your own equipment, because I know daft things like GSM signal strength, which how most of our data is transmitted, we record that and which network we're on, so that we can see if something goes offline or starts to get a bit wobbly, what was happening at the time, because it's very difficult to know remotely unless you record data such as that, which is obviously not directly required by the application, but it's useful to have to prove if stuff's not working as it should, or etc. A big thing that I don't know if it'll get talked about at another point in here is Network Rail's product acceptance. They have quite a significant process to have equipment, in our case, put track or near track side. That's now called this DFR, Design for Reliability. It is a good thing and a necessary thing, and it means Network Rail get reliable products at the end of the day. But it does require a significant resource on both the company side and also possibly more importantly, on Network Rail side. And this is required at the start. of all projects now, and it does need significant effort, resource, commitment from whoever's kind of sponsoring your Network Rail, and that's gradually filtering out to, I think, some people within Network Rail. But I think it's you need to be aware of that, I think, before you start. And that was me. Thank you. Back to Janine, I think.
Hi everyone, it's Shona here. We've got a short session for Q&A, but the time's already 10 to 11. So I noticed there are 2 questions in the chat from Philip Dixon. I think if we move on to the next section, and then if we have time at the end, we'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll definitely follow them up after the event. I hope that's okay. So now we would pass on to Hugh Evans.
Hello, good morning everybody. My name is Hugh Evans. I'm a Programme Manager in Network Rail's Research and Development team in Milton Keynes, looking after 2 asset-related research and development areas. One is in power and power systems, the other in track and plant. And this morning I'd just like to talk to you briefly about our proposals for research and development in cost-efficient electrification on the railway. So I think, Shona, if we can move down. Actually, it's probably opportune here just to quickly introduce Brian Mallon from Scotland's Railway, who'll talk initially about the work that the capital delivery team are doing, and my follow-on the further research into electrification will be a suitable link, I think.
Okay, Hugh, thank you very much. Can we jump on to the next slide, please? So good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Mallon. I'm a Programme Manager with Network Rail in Scotland, and I'm working on our rolling programme of decarbonisation. Alan Ross touched on our challenge earlier about decarbonising passenger services, and I just want to add a little bit about for context around this, and that will really then flow on to Hugh's R&D section. So the Scottish Government has an ambitious target to decarbonise passenger services by 2035, which is 10 years ahead of the rest of the UK rail industry. So for us to achieve that, we need to deliver 1,800 single track kilometres of new electrification across some of these routes that I've got mentioned there. We've got a significant amount of overbridges, so it's bridges on the routes that need to be increased in height so that we can get electrification through these structures. So it's over 560. We need to extend parapets to ensure they're safe for people working or walking past on these structures. And we need to ensure that all the signalling and telecom systems are all immunised so there's no EMC issues. And we'll also have to do platform extensions and station upgrades as required. Now, all these new trains will also require power. So we will have 18 new feeder stations, so traction power supplies, so that we've got power for all the new trains. To add a bit more for context, in 2018, we commissioned a project called Stirling-Dunblane-Alloa. That was roughly about 100 single track kilometres. That was maybe 8 years in the making for that project to be taken forward. And we're going to have to deliver more than a Stirling-Dunblane-Alloa every year from now to 2035 to achieve this challenge. Next slide, please. So this again is just for context. Those routes in green are already electrified. Those in orange are planned to be decarbonised in the mid-2020s, and then thereafter we roll out a phased decarbonisation approach across the network. Those in yellow on the left-hand side, it's proposed to be hydrogen, and others will form a mixture of perhaps bi-mode technology, maybe battery, along with traditional electrification as well. And just a final slide for me, please. So we've looked at our lessons learned, and we've identified some constraints. If you click on again, please. No, okay. There should be some other points that come up, but essentially we've identified a number of items that are constraints for us in previous projects, and we're working on them just now. So we know that if we don't manage utilities early enough in the programme, that introduces risks for us. So we know we need to get these things out of the way. We're working on progressive design assurance using technology rather than paper-based trails. And one key thing for the discussion just now is that previously we buy materials from our principal contractors, but what we want to do now is to engage with the supply chain where we can directly to really work with SMEs to supply materials for us. I'll just pass over.
Thank you very much, Brian. So I think if we move into the next slide, please, Shona. So as I touched upon at the start of this, cost-efficient electrification. What we need to do is to work out how to achieve delivery of the volumes of electrification work, but at lower cost. I think Brian explained very well there the magnitude of the challenge in Scotland for 2035, and then that can be sort of replicated across England and parts of Wales as well over the next 20 years or so. But to achieve the volumes but lower cost, we need to provide evidence to enable new designs and installation processes to be safely progressed and safely installed. So our proposal from within the research and development team is to deliver a collection of work streams that could come up with alternative solutions. And these work streams will mix theory and practical research, which I think would be of interest to both innovative organisations in Scotland and also academic institutions. And the outputs from this work will inform our standards and policies and work instructions. So as we move forward to our next control period, we can hopefully start to roll out electrification schemes at a lower rate. So I think show the next slide, please. So some examples of the work streams we're looking at. I won't sit here and read them all out, but some examples would be looking at span lengths of electrification schemes. If we can increase the distance between support structures, but still attain the level of performance and the line speed that we need to apply, then that means less structures, less manufacturing costs, less transportation costs, less foundation costs, but as I said, achieving the outputs and the requirements that we need to. Can we look at what we call sweep? And sweep, if you look at the picture there, the wire that's in contact with a train as it runs underneath sort of sways or staggers from side to side, so we don't wear a groove in the pantograph. Can we improve the design of sway so that we can reduce further wear on pantograph carbons and have a lower whole life cost for electrification as well? Dynamic testing is something that is quite intrusive, involving a test train, quite long periods of time whilst we prove the electrification system works after it's been built and prior to it entering into service. So again, can we reduce any requirements here? Can we look at novel ways of testing that mean we can get electrification schemes from construction to entry into service much more quickly and much more efficiently? And the next slide, please, Shona. A couple of other examples to pick out here would be foundation design. Now, I think as Brian touched on, a lot of work associated with electrification schemes is enabling type work. So foundations for structures, infrastructure alterations in the vicinity of electrification schemes. Can we look at further improvements and further efficiencies in how we design and install our foundations for structures? And I think move on again, Shona, please. Structure design and alternative materials. I think if you look south of the border, at Reading and Paddington and areas that have fairly recently been electrified, that you see some quite monstrous structures that support the electrification systems there. So what can we do in the area of structures and support structures? Can we design something that still fulfills its requirements but is lighter weight, easier to transport, easier to erect, and easier to maintain in the future? Can we look at other materials as well? What composite materials could we look at? As we know, material science develops all the time. So again, there could be areas there. And taking a slightly different angle, working at height. So as well as looking to reduce the initial cost of electrification, can we look at reducing the sort of whole life cost of maintenance whilst it's installed as well? So what examples of working at height and maintenance activities exist across Europe and other areas that we could perhaps tap into and develop for our benefit here in the UK? Thank you, Shona. And finally, on this slide, I'd pick up on discontinuous electrification. Again, Brian, in his map of Scotland, showed areas where there would be infill electrification and then sections of route where trains may transfer to a different mode of operation where electrification isn't suitable. So can we achieve, or can we look at efficiencies in this area? Are there better ways of achieving discontinuous electrification that would avoid the need to undertake quite expensive bridge reconstructions or track lowering in tunnels? And what technology is available for us to exploit in that area? So what I've shared here really is a number of work streams. As I said, they would probably appeal to both manufacturing and design enterprises and academia. And if we can develop and work through these through the next 2 or 3 years, we would hopefully arrive at something in CP7, our control period 7, where we can deliver the volumes of electrification, but at a much lower cost, and understand the failure modes better, and that would lead to a reduced whole life cost as well. So hopefully there's a lot of work there, and at least some of that may be of interest to companies on the call today. So thank you for that. And now I believe I hand back over to Janine.
Yes, thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Janine.
So one example there of one of the challenges around decarbonisation. I have an example of a challenge around putting passengers first and things like accessibility. So my example relates to lifts and escalators, their reliability, and us being able to provide that information to passengers. So if we could have the next slide. So the problem we have with lifts and escalators is that they go out of service. You know, some reasons sometimes this is for planned reasons, sometimes this is due to things like vandalism. But what we want to make sure is that people know what assets are available before they leave their homes. And we have monitoring on our devices that helps us to understand how their condition is, and we're doing more as part of a project on lifts and escalators to use that data and to improve the reliability of those assets. But at the same time, we've made that data available externally. So we've set up an application programming interface that provides real-time asset availability for all of those lifts and escalators where we have the monitoring to be able to do so. So you'll see on the top right there, there's a map associated with where we've got monitoring, and a little tick that shows that the lifts are all available at that station. And you have amber where they're not, or there's issues with certain lifts or escalators. The API is up and running. It has been up and running for a little while, so hopefully some of you are aware of that as it got launched towards the back end of 2020. It's totally free. Anybody can sign up. There's a couple of links on the screen there. We can also make them available externally if it's too quick on the slide to copy just now. But what I would like you to do is, as well as us developing a map on our website for people to be able to access this information and see what's available, and as well as working with organisations like the Rail Delivery Group to put the information on on nationalrail.co.uk website, we'd like others to pick up on this information. So if you're an app developer, if you own a journey planning app, if you provide a website for a train operating company or anything like that, we would really like you to work with those parties to use this data to help us get the information out to the passengers sooner, so that they know before they leave their homes what situation is around lifts and escalators. Now, of course, that isn't just the end of the problem if they're aware that a lift isn't working at one of the stations. What we have been working with the train operating companies with and our own managed station staff is to provide additional information about how they can get alternative support. So we provide mobility assistance services at stations. things like mobility assistance buggies or alternative lifts that could be used, perhaps back of house. That means those people can still get from A to B and complete their journey. But of course, the sooner we know about those kind of situations where they might need additional assistance, the better, to make sure that we can accommodate that. So that's just one example from me around where we'd really like your assistance. There are many others that we would like to articulate that come out from the Network Rail R&D portfolio. And we will be sharing some of those that align to the first of kind competition that's being launched or has been launched this week to make sure that you've got more information, because we just wouldn't have enough time to cover them all off today. So thank you very much, and I'll hand over to the next person.
Thank you to everybody who's posted questions. What I'll do is ask the questions that were from this section first, and then go back to a couple that are for the first session. So Frank Roach, I don't know if you want to put on your camera or not. Frank asked, what is the rationale for infill electrification sections on the Highland Main Line? Seems to be counter to the Transport Scotland decarb strategy map showing full electrification. Not sure who would be best placed to answer that.
Shona, I think we'll go to Brian Mallon in Network Rail.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Brian. Are you there? Nope.
I can pick that one up, Shona, if Brian's maybe had to drop off the call. Yeah, good question, Frank. It's very much an interim stage, and it's one of the many potential solutions that we're looking at. The intent is definitely to have the Highland Main Line and for that part, the vast majority of those lines that were shown to be electrified to be full electrification. But it's certainly an option to consider. Is there benefits in getting decarbonised rolling stock running quicker through discontinuous as an interim stage, in as much as full electrification generally takes longer. So it is really just an option, Frank, but the final objective is to have all of our main lines fully electrified rather than discontinuous. Obviously, full electrification gives us the full suite of decarbonised benefits, including the ability to run at greater speed and also to haul freight locomotives, where a discontinuous approach is maybe not as effective. Hopefully that answers your question, Frank.
Thanks, Alan. A question from Nick Merrick. Nick, I'm not sure if you're here, want to put your camera on, but Nick asks, how are the challenges for cost electrification and indeed other challenges faced being opened up to the market for innovation?
That's maybe a question that Janine can answer more fully. However, I guess this event today is part of our engagement with the wider organisations who we feel have got a part to help Network Rail and indeed the rail industry solve a number of our challenges. Janine, can you just enlighten people about how we showcase where people can get access to our challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally speaking, our challenges are listed on our website. If you Google Network Rail challenge statements, you'll find the challenges explained in detail, and there's an option there to get in touch with us through our email address, so rdi@networkrail.co.uk, and you can submit your ideas or ask some questions through that route. We kind of monitor that inbox and make sure that the replies are sent back to you within a week to two. But specifically around electrification, Hugh started outlining his cost-efficient electrification programme. He has a number of other projects related to decarbonisation and power in his programme. So Hugh, I just wondered if you wanted to say a couple of words.
Probably not much more than yourself and Alan eloquently put it, but the programme of work I was talking about is something that we are looking to start. It's currently at proposal stage in our programme, and something that we're looking to start hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years. So we will approach the market, we will make it known that we are looking to do this work. But I think shortly, Bryony Toogood from our from Network Rail will be talking, I think, shortly about how we can engage SMEs in particular and other businesses in our R&D portfolio. That's perhaps not a particularly binary response, but please hang on for this next section and hopefully you'll get a bit more information. And if you've still got questions, then by all means, fire them back again shortly.
And I think, Janine, we're also working on a more intuitive and interactive web browser type approach that allows organisations to be able to explore our challenges in a more intuitive manner. I know that's coming into.
You've stolen my thunder there, on. So no, that's fine. That's fine. So at the lunch break, Shona will be sharing a link to our Explorer tool, is what Alan Ross is referring to, which is R&D in itself for us. So effectively, it's a tool that allows you to navigate all of the project subject areas that we have within the R&D portfolio and to learn a little bit more about them. So to just give you a flavour of what's coming, because that tool is soon available for you to access all the projects. We've got a little video that we'll share the link to at the lunch hour.
Somebody should have given me a spoiler alert.
I think the next question you might have covered there, really. Gillian Moffat asks, have you advertised challenges as open innovation challenges into the marketplace? I guess that.
Yeah, so I can take that one again. I mean, yes, we do. I mean, Bryony will cover a lot of how we advertise the challenges when it comes to taking them forward in terms of procurement. But in terms of saying we have these challenges, we're not sure yet how we're going to procure, that's what we do on our website with our challenge statements. But specifically knowing that the competition is open with first of a kind, we'll be sharing with all participants or people registered for the event today a list of specific challenges that align to that first of a kind competition. So that will go out with the notes and slides from this day today.
Can I just chip in as well? It's David Rowe. So I think it's just worth remembering that actually this is, like we were saying, we've been sort of saying in the earlier part of the session, that actually this is quite a complex space. So everything doesn't always follow that a very kind of tidy path where Network Rail, for example, is finding some money and putting out a set of requirements to the market and expecting something back. I mean, that's happening some of the time, and as you said, you're going to hear a bit more about from Bryony about that. But actually, there are lots of opportunities in terms of identifying sort of broader grant funding, which is effectively a bit what the First of a Kind 2021 competition is like. But there's lots and lots of money available through other competitions run by Innovate UK, and then connecting those to the challenges that Janine referred to, for example, the 55 challenges that we've got published on our website generally, and also, of course, the rail technical strategy, which I'd mentioned earlier, which provides that sort of roadmap, which you can think about how solutions that you think you might want to develop could fit into that. And then, talk with organisations like the Railway Industry Association, for example, about how maybe to exploit that.
Great, thank you, David. Mike Smith asks, what workshops, forums exist for SMEs to discuss the challenges and offer solutions, and swift access to support and sponsorship to develop solutions, akin to hackathons, but for specific challenges outside of software solutions? How can we collaborate? I would be specifically interested in discussing electrification challenges.
So I can pick up part of that. So we do hackathons. We have done them for various subjects. I expect they will be planned in the future. There aren't currently hackathons planned for the electrification challenges. I've said already, if you've got specific ideas, you're welcome to email into rdi@networkrail.co.uk. And in terms of the different procurement approaches other than hackathons that we do, Bryony will definitely cover off things like design contests, where it's a more broad, more back and forth conversation than a straight submit a bid type procurement.
Okay, anyone else got anything to add to that one? Nope. Okay, and the final question is from Andrew Gordon. IP aside, ultimately, who would an SME take an idea to in Network Rail, and what assurances can be given to an SME to ensure they're protected and their idea is first to market?
Bryony, could you pick that up at all around the IP, the confidentiality?
Oh, Bryony, you're very quiet. I don't know if that's the same for everyone. You're very quiet.
Is that a bit better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Apologies for that. Good morning, everyone. So, who should? There's a couple of sort of points to this question. Who should an SME take an idea to? So, I think Janine and Hugh have already covered quite well in terms of the fact that we've got our RD&I challenge statements and inbox that ideas can be submitted to. I've got a little bit in my presentation, which is in the next slot, around how we've developed something called a pitch platform, where suppliers can go and pitch their ideas to us for challenges that we may not have published yet, that we might not be aware about. With regards to ensuring that ideas can be protected, of course, if intellectual property is a factor, that's something that we do need to consider, and we do consider as part of our procurement routes to market. We have to balance that with being a public organisation, being governed by public procurement regulations, and the need to be fair and open and transparent in what we do. So it's not, we wouldn't sort of take your idea and release it to the market, but that, you know, there does have to be a balance between the two. And by submitting ideas, it generates the opportunity for yourselves to be involved in any future sort of procurements that we might do, where we might have not identified that we were going to do sort of procurement in that space in the first instance.
Thanks, Bryony. I'm just going to go back to one of the questions asked in the first session. I hope that's all right. It's from Philip Dixon. Has Network Rail considered using the on-train DAS, as in driver advisory system, to allow drivers to report line-side issues? This could help identify issues developing, such as foliage, water, rail or points issues. This would build up a database of issues to target resources on the rail network.
So if I can take part of that, that'd be good, because my R&D program does look at line-side monitoring, and if I can ask Stuart Jameson to consider the kind of line-side failure element of that as well, that would be great. So from my perspective, general monitoring of the line side for vegetation and things like that, we haven't actually, certainly within my portfolio, been using the driver advisory system at all. We've actually favoured remote sensing. And we have a huge project at the moment ongoing around using 3 different remote sensing techniques to detect vegetation and things like diseased trees, vegetation encroachment that causes things like obscured signals. And you've already heard from Central Alliance about the soil moisture mapping work that we're doing for remote sensing around the condition of the land further away from the railway. So yeah, at the moment we favoured the approach for remote sensing, but if you have a specific suggestion and know more technologically why DAS would be a good choice, please feel free to submit your idea to me through the RDI at networkrail.co.uk website, email address, sorry. So Stuart, if you're able to pick up the earthworks side of that.
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, it's something that we have looked at. You know, we've trialed, and I think it's an area that we're potentially going to look into further. I think I don't really know what else to say on that just now, other than that we'll maybe take it forward. But yeah, we'll certainly have a discussion about it afterwards.
So I can just say my idea really around DAS is because we've got hundreds of drivers driving the network every day.
Yes.
I used to be a driver on ScotRail, so I know that. And you do notice things like build-up of water, new water flows, that kind of thing. I just think it's like an early warning, perhaps. It's not going to capture your overnight events. Obviously, your first train down in the morning is going to come across what it comes across. But I'm just considering that build up of things that happen.
Yeah, I suppose in that respect, I mean, we do get some feedback from train drivers. It's maybe just not as structured as that. We do rely on feedback from maintenance colleagues on the ground as well, you know, and they all get logged as defects or potential emerging issues and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, we're always open to looking at better ways of accepting that information in and recording it. So, yep, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Scott. Have you got your hand up? Scott Prentice? No, maybe not. Maybe it's just...
He's speaking, he's just needs to come off mute.
I think you're on mute.
I am, yeah, and it won't be the last time today, I'm sure. It was just to help in terms of Phil's question. So Phil's right in terms of drivers pick up lots of stuff, and there is a reporting system where drivers will report unusual things that they see to control, and then that's fed back to Network Rail maintenance. What we've actually looked at and done some tests on is all of our trains are fitted with forward-facing CCTV cameras, and we've done some trials with AI to see if we can basically take, in simple terms, take the CCTV from a train that runs a route several times a day, and then use AI to identify where things are gradually changing. So that would address things like foliage or water buildup at the side of the track, or even some movement of parameters, of earthworks and things like that at the side. So it is something that certainly the ScotRail fleet has the information to make available for Network Rail to use, and it's just one of those things that at the moment we collectively as an industry have to just work out the best way of transferring that information and getting it into the right hands so that it can be analysed and form part of preventative maintenance plans.
Thanks, Scott. That's great. I think we'll now move on to Bryony for her section.
Thanks, Shona.
No problem.
Good morning again, everybody. So my name is Bryony Toogood, and I'm a sourcing manager within the commercial and procurement department in Network Rail. So quite a lot of the questions that we've had in that Q&A has quite nicely springboarded into my slot. So I am going to spend some time now telling you about how you can get involved with us and how you can collaborate with us by telling you how we procure for R&D and for innovation. So I'm part of a team that specialises in the procurement of R&D. We support the R&D programme in all of their procurement requirements, and will do for the rest of CP6. So yes, I'm going to spend some time today taking you through our specifically what we're doing within the SME within the SME space, but also what routes to market we utilise for procurement and how you can get involved in them. Can I have the next slide, please, Shona? So Network Rail a couple of years ago released our SME action plan. So the SME action plan is not by any means specific to research and development, but it does capture some key challenges that we experience and we have when we're procuring R&D. There's 6 pillars within it, and there's 31 actions to improve how we will work with SMEs throughout our organisation. We're also soon to release a supplementary plan to our top 100 SMEs, which will encourage, which is aimed to encourage them to also sort of implement some of the actions that we are taking within our supply chain. And there is also an SME action plan being launched shortly, specifically for Scotland. And we have Martin McLaren on the call as well today, who's the head of supplier management in Scotland. And he will sort of be the main point of contact for the SME action plan in Scotland and championing that. We've had some success already in launching this plan. So in last financial year, we contracted directly with over 3,000 SMEs, and over 71% of our contracts were, this equated to over 71% of our contracts. And we have spent over 2.53 billion with SMEs last year, either directly or indirectly, which does exceed the government targets that we have. One of the biggest sort of successes, I think, and one of the biggest transformations in this space is that we've made all of our standards freely available to SMEs when they were previously had to be paid for. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So although all pillars of this action plan are clearly very important, the pillar that I'd like to focus on particular today is the innovation pillar, as we are on the innovation day today. We in the team that I work in, we've used feedback from the supply chain, from the R&D programme, and from commercial colleagues in the industry to introduce a suite of procurement options for Network Rail that are targeted at fast-tracking R&D and innovation. The suite that I'm going to show you today is by no means exhaustive in terms of what we could do. They're what we have available at the moment, and they sit on top of our standard routes to market. So you know how we would tender for commercial options, and we're still evolving. We're looking for ways to improve and make procurement of R&D easier all the time. We're also sort of exploring how we can better manage intellectual property, and how we can make more intelligent decisions around what should happen with intellectual property when we've been involved in the development that manages both our requirements under managing public money, but also with the needs of the supply chain and making sure that IP sort of sits with who's best to exploit it. The rest of my presentation is going to take you through a whistle-stop tour of routes to market, when they might be used, and how you can get involved in them. I could spend probably hours talking about each of them in detail, so it will be quite high level, but there are some contact details and links at the end that can help you find out some more information. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is R&D? I don't want to spend time undermining an audience of people here that I'm sure are very, very familiar with what R&D is and what R&D isn't. But the reason why I wanted to really discuss this today was because for procurement, distinguishing between R&D versus commercial products or commercial procurement is really important. Because we are legally able to be a bit more flexible with how we procure research and development and innovation than we would be potentially with a commercial product or service. So we use technology readiness levels and rail industry readiness levels, as well as the desired outcome of the R&D to decide which route to market might be most applicable for us. And when we're looking at R&D within procurement, we sort of start off at solution exploration and idea, and that works its way right through to RIRL 7, initial deployment or first in class. So that could include a limited supply to sort of demonstrate if something is suitable for quantity production. So we have 5 specific R&D routes to market, which I'd like to take you through today. And we'll start off on the next slide, please, which is collaborative research and development. Thank you. So collaborative research and development is a pre-commercial procurement, it tends to be focused at lower technology readiness levels, but it's not limited to that. It's a method which aims to stimulate the market, and it is, as it says in the name, really, it's a collaborative effort across industries. So it allows Network Rail to either fund or be involved in the collaboration in the R&D. So it's a percentage of the costs are granted from public funds. So for small organisations, can be eligible for up to 50% of their R&D costs funded. For medium, it's 40%, and for large, it's 30%. It is it is, as I said, a pre-commercial procurement event. So once the R&D is complete, and if the product or service is demonstrated as successful, there has to be a competitive tender once the R&D is completed. Network Rail has recently collaborated with this method under a project called Prometheus, which I know David Rowe touched on briefly earlier. So we collaborated with a number of industry partners here to develop a drone which scanned the insides of mines and cave-in systems, which aims to help us to identify the risk of slippage or collapse around the infrastructure because of this. We, as in Network Rail, aren't currently publicising or currently have any opportunities available within this space. But when they are available, they're published via the gov.uk website, and it's probably worth saying that it's not just us that launches opportunities via this means. It is open to other public organisations. So there may be opportunities that are within or outside of the rail industry that could be found on that website as well. The next route to market that I'd like to discuss is small business research initiatives. So could I have the next slide, please, Paul? Thank you. So small business research initiatives, or SBRIs, as you'll probably hear them referred to quite regularly, are again a pre-commercial procurement. The R&D costs are fully funded, and we have embarked on a couple of quite a few SBRIs where we've fully funded for a number of challenges that we have in our industry. It's again to stimulate the market, and it requires a competitive tender once complete if the R&D is successful. As you'll see from the diagrams here, there can be several phases to this. So there would be a pre-commercial procurement or pre-commercial competitive exercise at the offset, whereby we then identify a number of suppliers that we'd like to work with throughout the R&D phases, and we can down select based on the success at each stage. Once that R&D phase is then complete, there is a competitive tender for commercial deployment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the suppliers who were involved in phase 3 here, for example, would be the only ones that are eligible for that commercial deployment tender. That would encourage suppliers from previous phases could come back in and compete if they've continued to develop their solution through other means, and it also opens the market up to other suppliers. It's not just those that have been competing or participating in the R&D phases through the funder. These are also published via the gov.uk website, and the first of a kind 2021 competition, which was launched this week and is being introduced as well again later on today in the second half of this the session, is an SBR opportunity that we currently have available in the industry. Could I have the next slide, please? The Innovation Partnership Procedure is another means of procurement that I'd like to briefly touch on today. So the Innovation Partnership Procedure, or the IPP, is a tender which combines the procurement of the development phases and the commercial procurement. The innovation here must be exclusive to the buyer, so it would be exclusive to Network Rail, and it must not already be available on the market, on the open market. It's not to be looked at, it's not to be sort of seen that this is the solve all to any challenges, because it's great that we can phase into from R&D to the commercial phase. The process at the offset, so that tender for the R&D and commercial deployment, can take between 9 to 12 months. It's a complex process, and it is published openly as the other competitions are. It's complex for both the buyer, so for Network Rail, and also for the supply chain. So it requires maturity in the approach from both parties. and it would only be used by us if we were absolutely intending to buy the outcome of the R&D if it was successful. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next slide is the last but one option that I'm going to talk you through today. It's an option that we have called single tender action within the R&D space, which means that we direct award to a supplier with no competition. We can use this throughout the life cycle of R&D, providing that it doesn't provide any profit to the organisation that we might be working with, and it doesn't distort the market. Now, this option is sometimes unavoidable if there is absolutely no other option on the market, so there isn't any other technologies available that we can that we know of that we can compete to. But we do try to steer away from this where possible, because it doesn't allow it doesn't open up that opportunity for suppliers to compete. It doesn't create competitiveness in the market, and it could reduce our options later on down the line. And we might also not be working with the most appropriate partner identified through competition. So it is an option that we have, but we try and avoid it where possible. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then this is the last final procurement route that I would like to introduce to you today. Design contests are a fairly new concept to Network Rail. I've seen that one of the questions was around hackathons, so we've previously used design contests for hackathons. It's typically used for architecture and town planning. However, we do use it in the R&D space for data processing and engineering design. So we have used it outside of hackathons, and I'm sure we will continue to use it in the future for our R&D challenges, specifically around data processing and engineering design. At a very high level, throughout this process, Network Rail would release an opportunity, publish an opportunity widely for a design contest, inviting suppliers or individuals to submit a design or plan based on high-level requirements. That design or plan is then anonymously evaluated by a jury panel, and we select either one or multiple winners to participate to a negotiation phase. During that phase, we'd negotiate what the sort of how we would be willing to fund that development from that design or the plan, what the commercial sort of arrangements in terms of contracts would be, etc. And then we are able to award a service contract for research and development services. If the service following the design contest, so if the innovation or the R&D is intending to continue to be a service, we can then continue to award contracts for deployment of that service. If the R&D, if the piece developed is a product or a good, then we would have to go back out and run a tender for the commercial deployment for that product. But it's a really good way of being quite open with what our challenges are and not being too restrictive in terms of what we're looking to the ideas that we're looking to generate and have back from the industry in that respect. If I can have the next slide, please. So we've launched quite a few of these now. As I said, they are fairly new, but they've been really well received by both colleagues in Network Rail, but also by the industry and by SMEs. We launched a design contest in sort of middle of last year called Innovation Stations, and that design contest was specifically targeted at how we can use data such as passenger flow within Manchester Piccadilly station to help manage passengers at busy periods. So how can we direct passengers sort of better within stations during those busy periods? It was really, really well received by, as I said, both Network Rail colleagues in the stations, but also by SMEs who gave us really good feedback about how that enabled them to submit their ideas to our challenges. So the last slide, if I could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the last slide that I'm going to take you through today, and you'll notice, you may notice that on the first two routes to market, so the collaborative research and development and the small business research initiative, I mentioned that opportunities can be seen there from the gov.uk website. The other opportunities, so the innovation partnerships, design contests, etc., we publish those opportunities directly ourselves, and we do that via our procurement platform, which is Bravo NR, and there's a link on here. If you Google Network Rail Bravo NR, you should be able to have access to that portal. You can view opportunities without having an account, but you can also then create an account to respond to opportunities, and that account is free to create. That will have all of our current opportunities available on there. In terms of our future pipeline, we publish our pipeline and update this on a monthly basis now on our supply chain website. So if you go on Network Rail and search for Network Rail's website and search for supply chain, you will see our future pipeline there. And on that pipeline, there is a direct procurement contact for that particular opportunity. So you can get in touch and find out more with a procurement individual about that. That pipeline doesn't just cover R&D, it covers all of our opportunities that we have in the future coming up. Another opportunity which I briefly touched on earlier in answer to one of the questions was on the Pitch platform. So the Pitch platform initiative is an opportunity that initiative that's been developed by Ken Blackley, who's our commercial program director, and he is the SME Action Plan champion. It's targeted for identifying opportunities or art of the possible within the market that might not align to any of our challenge statements. So if you've got a challenge, if you've got an idea that addresses one of the challenge statements that is published on our R&D website, which Deneen mentioned, there's the ideas towards those can be submitted through the RD&I inbox. If, for example, you have an idea that is completely outside of the realms of what we might have thought of might be our challenge at the moment, the Pitch platform is a place that you can submit your ideas for challenges that we haven't identified. So it is only an idea generation platform. It's not a sort of route to market. Once the ideas come in and we've identified that yes, that's a great idea, we might want to look at how we can take that forward. There would be sort of a need to have an open call via one of the methods that I've taken you through previously. But it really encourages us to think about what the art of the possible for the future R&D and innovation projects might be. So it opens up opportunities for areas of focus that we might not have even thought about. And in that respect, then gives you as an SME the opportunity to be involved in that. If you have an idea in that, you can submit your idea directly to Ken Blackley. So his email address is there. It's kenneth.blackley@networkrail.co.uk. If you have any particular queries about the routes to market that I've just gone through, I'm happy for you to send an email to myself. And if there is so my email address is bryony.toogood@networkrail.co.uk. And if you have a particular question around the SME engagement or opportunities and the SME action plan that is soon to be released in Scotland, Martin McLaren has kindly said that he would be available for you to contact there. So that concludes my section. Thanks for listening. I hope that was useful to give you a bit of an understanding of what routes to market we use for R&D, and I think we'll open for Q&A.
Thanks very much, Bryony. We've got one question for you. If you fund R&D at a university, do you fund 100% of the costs or something else?
So I think it will. We do fund 100% of university costs in some instances. Within the R&D programme, we have targets to work towards match funding and gaining match funding from industry, whether that's via universities, other public funds, or or suppliers. So if there's opportunity for match funding to be sought through research councils, for example, when we're working with universities, we would absolutely explore that. But if there's we do, and we have in the past funded universities 100%.
Great, thank you very much. We've made really good time, so I know we've missed some questions, but I'm just going to conclude this morning's session with a thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who has attended in the audience. I know it's a bit strange, there's so many of us in line, but we don't get to see each other. We're really grateful you've attended, and we hope you found it of use. Thank you very much to Alan, Janine, Sean, Mike, Brian, Hugh, Stuart and Brian. I hope I haven't missed anyone. You've given us a great insight into the incredibly important work of the RD&I team at Network Rail and some of your really successful projects. So thanks so much. Look out for the link. We'll email out the links that were talked about during these presentations, during the lunch hour, and the slides for the first of a kind challenge owners from David's section. So look out for that email. If you're interested, the Rail Cluster Builder is holding an event on next week on the 18th of February at 9:30 in the morning. It's a Get Into Rail session aimed at SMEs looking to come into the market, talking about risks. RIA and the Rail Alliance will be there, and we'd love it if you could join. So if you take a look on the Rail Cluster web portal on the Scottish Engineering website, you'll find out more details there. And finally, just a quick reminder that there's only one Teams link for the afternoon session. So just click, go and have a lovely break and some nice lunch or whatever you're going to do, and just use the same link for the afternoon session. And I think that's me. Thank you very much for joining. I will see you in the afternoon.
Thanks, Shona. Do you mind, Shona, just putting up the slides that has our contact details on? That would be lovely.
Of course not.
Yeah, the lunch break one. Because it's got the link there as well to the video about the Project Explorer tool, which I believe is also going to be put in the chat. So thank you.
Yeah. We can email that link out to Janine if you'd like.
Yes, please. Yeah, as well as the documentation around the challenges that going on.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.